band camp, Fleming Island's got something to do with the band camp equipment?
I think we need to make sure.
If you'd stand for the invocation. Our Father, we ask that you be with us today as we do the work for the betterment of the school district. Please be with our teachers and our support personnel, our police department, our administrators, and this board as we prepare to get ready for the opening of school. We ask you to guide us in all your ways, in all our ways. Amen. Would you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The July 30th, 2019 special meeting of the Clay County School Board will come to order. I'd like to welcome citizens of Clay County. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend the school board meeting. This meeting is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. Since we will be having public hearings, you are not required to fill out a card. If you want to speak, you can speak when the public hearing is open. I do ask that, if you will, though, to go ahead and fill out a card because it makes our secretary's life a lot easier, and we want to make sure that we get the names spelled correctly. The cards are located in the back of the room, and you can just hand them to one of the deputies. We welcome your participation, and we appreciate it. Number 1 on the agenda, review the 2019-2020 proposed millage rollback rate calculation and the 2019-2020 tentative budget, all funds. Dr. Legutko?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Superintendent. Today we will be reviewing the adoption of the millage and the approval of the tentative budget for 2019-2020. I do want to call to your attention the document that you have in front of you. There are 2 changes. I believe it's on page 6. And the very last page, they're just minor changes, but page 53. But they're just minor changes, and I will address it as we get to that page. Okay? So, all right, let's begin. Hold on. Okay. Annually, I am required, as part of our budget process, to develop a particular schedule for trim, truth and millage. This schedule is required in order for us to set the millage rate each year. So as you can see on the screen, there is a timeline on our preparation for the budget. And of course, the red portion of the schedule represents our trim guidelines. This is part 3 of our steps, which is to hold a public hearing to approve the tentative budget and the millage. Okay, our next slide represents a historical view of our property assessment values. As you can see, this is a 20-year schedule. What I want to bring to your attention, though, is that for 1920, we are going to generate about $89.5 million in local dollars. That includes the 1 mil, the voted 1 mil. If you take away that 1 mil, we would generate about $76.8 million. That is in line with the 2010-2011 fiscal year, close to it. So, in other words, we are generating the same amount of tax dollars that we did back in 2010-11. I wanted to point that out since I think it's significant there. Okay. Moving forward, our proposed millage levy for 2019-2020, our required local effort is 3.799, which will generate about $48,280,899. Basic discretionary, 0.748, and 9.50 will generate 9.506215. Capital outlay, we will levy 1.50, which will generate approximately 19,063,266 million. The additional voted millage is the 1.0, and that will generate 12,708,844. The total millage to be levied is 7.047, which will generate approximately 89,559,225. The total millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 19.44%. Okay, this slide represents a comparison to last year, compared to last year to the for 1920. Our property value, taxable value, was $11.9 billion. 1920, it's $12.7 billion. I'm not going to call all the numbers unless you absolutely need me to, but it's $12.7 billion. It's an increase of about $778 million. So with the required local effort, again, we will generate an additional $1.3 million from the required local effort, the discretionary 582,237 and 12.708,845, which is the additional mill. The 1.5 mil will generate approximately $1.1 million, giving us a total additional revenue compared to last year of $15,817,095. What does that mean for our taxpayers? It means that from last year, compared to last year, our millage rate was 6.181 with a home with the value of $100,000. The homeowner paid about $618.10 towards their school property tax, the school board's property portion of the tax. For 1920, the same value, $100,000 at the 7.047, they would need to pay $704.70, which is an increase of $86.60 per homeowner based on the $100,000 value. I do need to let you know that as a requirement for the Florida Department of Education, we are required to only budget 96% of the total millage of $89 million, so that represents $85,976,855.
Dr. Legutko,
Yes.
just for the record, how much discretion does this school board have on the 7.047 millage?
The 0.7,
7.047.
none,
None?
none.
And-
We are required to levy this millage, except
And-
for the 1.0, of course, that one was voted.
Right. And
Recent.
what would happen if we did not levy that millage?
If we did not levy the millage and generate the 89 million, we will not be able to participate in the FEFP program, the State Florida Education Finance Program, which will generate approximately, I believe it was $239 million, approximately. We
Thank
will
you.
get to that.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is the rollback rate? Again, each year we are required to identify whether or not we have a budget hearing or whether or not we have a tax increase. To determine whether we have a tax increase, the calculation determines what that rollback rate is. So the rollback rate is the millage rate for the new year, which would produce the same level as it did last year. So in essence, going back, if we wanted to generate the same amount of dollars as last year, which is the $73,742,129, we are to use the rollback rate. And again, it's part of a calculation that TRIM has, and because it was more than zero, the rollback rate was more than zero, it means that it will be a tax increase. So we need to advertise for a tax increase. Okay, again, you saw this. These were the advertisements that were in the newspaper on Thursday, past Thursday. So this is the summary budget, which it reflects the entire budget, a $440 million budget to operate the school system for 1920 school year. This is the required advertisement on how we are going to use the $1.5 million. These are the projects that will be funded by the dollars generated, the 19.063266. These are those projects that will be funded or potentially fund. It's a 3-page ad, so. And like I said, as a requirement, this is an amended notice for our tax capital outlay. Last year, we did the same process. However, there were changes to that initial advertisement for the projects. Therefore, as a requirement through TRIM, Truth and Millage, we must show or we must notify the public on the changes that occurred during the year. That means we are to file an amended notice of tax for school capital outlay for the 18-19 school year, And these are those purchases. And again, this was in the newspaper as well. Okay. As a result of the rollback rate being above 0%, we are required to advertise a notice of proposed tax increase. And again, it shows what last year's property tax levy was and what this year's proposed tax levy will be, $89,559,225. And it states, of course, that if we are to participate in the FEFP program and generate the dollars from the grants, of $233,595,801, we must generate at least $89,559,225. Okay, now we're going into the portion of the actual how these funds are going to be used. How are the $440 million going to be used? As you know, we have multiple funds that fund certain projects throughout the year. What I mean by certain projects, I mean certain funds. So there's general fund, there's federal, there's capital outlay, and there's debt service. And of course, there's our self-insurance fund for property and casualty insurance. So I'm going to go over the general fund piece of this. This year, we plan on generating at least $59,293,826 in local revenue. What does that mean? That means that we will have about $55.3 million in property tax. At the end of the year, we typically get a few additional dollars that comes from the delinquent taxes. It's about $750,000. Our interest on investment is about $400,000. All the different areas of what is considered local revenue. And again, we will propose to generate approximately $59,293,826. In addition to that, we plan on generating about $239,498,248 in state revenue. State revenue consists of our local our state FEFP dollars, FEFP, Florida Education Finance Program, Workforce Development, which is our adult program. Part of the FEFP, we have categorical funds, and we are required to report them separately. Capital outlay and debt service admin fee, we are required to budget for that. State license tax, we get a little bit of dollars from there. And our miscellaneous revenue, which is about $5.3 million. That number represents our best and brightest. So,
Dr. Legutko, could you give us the breakdown on the categoricals? I know a lot of people wonder about the lottery money and how much money we receive, and I know it's a lot less than what everybody thinks. So if you could tell us how much we receive in lottery dollars.
our lottery dollars, we will receive, can you hear me? Our lottery dollars is, we will receive approximately $130,000.
Thank you.
The other parts of our categorical, of course, is class size, mental health, SAI, instructional materials, teacher lead. So those dollars are specific to those activities.
But the bulk of that is school recognition, like A money?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, we have our federal revenue that we receive. We receive dollars from our impact aid funds, ROTC, and Medicaid. And that would generate about $2.7 million, giving us a total current revenue of about $301,557,074. Oops, I went a little fast, sorry. Okay. Other areas that do help with our our general fund is, again, we do have a transfer from our LCIF, which is the $1.5 million. We do transfer some dollars from there, which is about $4.1 million. That represents our capital projects, the maintenance, equipment, and project managers' salaries. And of course, we have, if we project that we would sell some land, equipment, that's our surplus property. So we're projecting about $70,000 in sale for the property. So the other financing sources is about $4.1 million, giving us a total revenue of and other sources of $305,727,827 in revenue. How do we spend our, well, again, as you can, this is a pictorial view. As you can see, the majority of those funds are derived from the state participation.
Dr. Legutko, just a quick question for
Sure.
clarity.
Mm-hmm.
When the proposed mill levy has a total of $89.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
but on our pie chart, the local dollars are 59.2 or 59.3 million, what's the difference there?
That includes other local revenues as well.
The mill levy, is that what you're talking about, or this pie chart?
The pie chart represents the 59, which includes, if you go back to page 16,
Right.
it includes the other dollars that we receive, which is like the E-rate dollars and everything. So even though the property tax is $55 million, if you're looking at that top chart, top line, the total is 59 because it includes other local revenues that we receive.
I guess I'm just confused why we don't have all of the local revenues from the mill levy in the pie chart.
No, because I separated it. Only
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that we identify specifically how that $1 million, the $1 million are being used.
Okay, so that's what's
So it's
subtracted
not
out.
part of this, no.
Okay.
No. but on the overall budget page, it is. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to go into our general fund dollars. School districts are required to budget based on our red book. It's called a red book. It is the name of it is Financial Program Cost Accounting Reporting for Florida Schools. It is a uniform chart of accounts for financial cost and budgeting reporting. So with that, there are certain areas that are specifically identified. So going back, you'll see that this chart represents how we budget our dollars by the activity, by the description of the activity. So for instance, instruction are all our teachers, all of our instructional activities related to the classroom. Student services is another part of our instruction, but it's specific to personal student services. Instructional media services, that's related directly to like the libraries, and there's all these different categories that we are required to budget our funds accordingly based on our red book. So this is a high-level view of how those funds are separated out to make up the 307,746,385. So for instance, our Board of Education, I wanted to bring that one out because it's we're spending about $844,471. What that includes, though, it's not just the board salaries and the activities that are day-to-day activities. It also includes other activities that relates to the entire school district, not just the board. But our red book requires us to budget those activities in that area, and then throughout the year, there are dollars that are moved around to reflect the true activity of what it is. Okay. And this is an analysis of where, of all our functions. As you can see, the majority of our dollars are spent is in the instructional side of our operation. Now we dig a little deeper where it goes to the finite activity, such as salaries, benefits, purchase services, energy services, materials and supplies, capital outlay, and other expenses. What that means is, of course, our salaries and benefits take up about 78.8% of the total budget. Purchase services, which represents contracts, travel, different travel, about $29 million. That takes about 9.67% of the total budget. Materials and supplies, 6.44%. Again, giving a total budget of $307,746,385. And this slide represents the majority of our cost is to salaries and benefits. As one of the largest employer in Clay County, we spend the majority of our funds on salaries and benefits. Okay, here's an overall picture of really where we stand. Our beginning fund balance, we're ending with about $31,934,738. We're expecting to generate about $301,557,074 in revenues. That gives us about $333,491,812 to operate. We take away the expenditures, encumbrances, appropriations of $307,746,384. That gives us about $25.7 million. Add the transfers and other financing sources to it, we're projecting to have a fund balance of about $29.9 million. So what does that mean? Of that fund balance, 14.5 is projected to be unreserved, unassigned. The rest of it is actually assigned. That means that the dollars that are in there are That means that the dollars that are in there are restricted for specific purposes. There are categoricals in there, such as specific dollars tied to, let's see, I've got it right here, hold on. tied to, let's see here, the FT, we have an FTE reserve. The categoricals that we do have that we have to roll forward because they can't be spent on anything else. It has to roll forward and used in that manner for the new year. Okay. This is what our projections are for June 30th, 2020, ending at 4.74. For June 30th, 2019, we are still in the process of finalizing our books, and on September 5th, we will present to you the final numbers unaudited, because again, the auditors will be here to review those numbers. But we are projecting to end with a 4.61 fund balance. Okay, now I wanted to talk about the 1 mil. This was not part of the general fund numbers, but the 1 mil, I wanted to separate it out so that we can see exactly how we're spending it. Function-wise, we are spending the majority of our dollars in operation and plant, which $7,900, which represents the police force and safety and security. In addition to that, we will spend about $3,074,000 in facilities acquisition and construction, hardening of our schools. So that equals the $10.2 million. Those are true expenditures under that fund. It's a different fund number, even though it's under general fund. We're separating it out. Object-wise, you can see the funds will go, 55% will go towards salaries and benefits. 784 will go towards purchase services. Materials and supplies, this little bit of amount will go in there, and the rest in capital outlay, about $3.6 million. So bottom line, what makes up the 12.2 that we will generate? Again, school police salaries and benefits is about $2.7 million. School their operational expense is about $2.5. School guardian salaries and benefits, it's about $945,000. Guardian operational expenditures, about $79,000. Hardening of schools, $3.8. And of course, the health insurance transfer to the general fund is about $2 million, making up the $12.2 million. Okay. And this is the pictorial view of how that 1 mil will be spent. Okay, now we're going into debt service. These are the funds that repay our debt back to the bank for the rebuilding of our the schools, past schools. Annually, we have a debt of about $5.1 million. Those dollars do come from the transfer of from the LCIF, the 1.5 mil. So as you can see, we're going to begin our fund bet. We'll roll some of those dollars, $441,509. We do get some revenue in because when you look at my chart, you'll see we get some SBA bonds, which is just a flow through from the state to us. So that's the revenue that it would generate. The majority of our expense really comes from the transfer from the LCIF, the 1.5 mil, which is about 4.6 million, 5.1 million, I'm sorry, which still leaves me with the fund balance of 440,608. This is a summary of our debt. As you can see, we have our SBE bonds. Again, those are pass-through. This year, of course, our annual payment will be about $68,000. The state, of course, will send us those funds. It'll be a flow through to us. Our racetrack bonds, again, on behalf of the state, it's about $215,955. Our COPs, our actual debt, are those which, again, it's the 2017, 2012, and 2014. Total COPS is about 5.108412. Our total debt is 5.3. We do have bank charges that we are responsible for, which is 16.100. a total debt for $5,408,927. This is a summary of our debt service and what is remaining. We have about $46 million remaining in debt, and our last payment will be 2031-2032, which is actually our state SBA. Our actual COPS issue, our final payment would be in 2027-2028.
Dr. Legutko,
Yes.
on the COPs,
Yeah.
were they all derived when Fleming Island busted wide open and the growth started? I was trying to remember. I know we had to take out some COPs to build some schools, and we didn't have the money to do it. But was it all during that growth spurt?
I believe, I would like to refer to my colleague here, Sonia. She's been here for much longer than I have been. Can you? Right.
Okay.
So Fleming Island High, we had Oak Leaf High School, Lake Asbury Junior, and Ridgeview High School. So those were the three that were financed to be built.
It was to deal with growth.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
It's the only reason we take debt out.
Right. And I'm glad that it's not still $100 million.
No,
Yeah.
no,
I can
that
remember those days.
number is going down
We're heading in
each
the
year.
right direction. That's correct.
Okay. So our long-term debt, again, state school bonds, we have a remaining balance of $242,660. Special act bonds, which is from racetrack dollars, $2.8 million remaining, and of course our COPs, $43,598,028. Okay, we'll get into the capital projects. Again, capital projects are for construction, renovation, remodeling projects specific to that. And it's funded by 1.5 mills, which we talked about as part of the millage, CONDS, capital outlay and debt service, and of course PICO. I would say that our PICO dollars, we've been receiving it many years now. For this year, we will receive $0 from the state. They took it away from us. Okay, this is a summary of the capital, the revenue that will be generated from those funding sources. Again, we get about $232 in interest, property taxes, and the 1.5 mil is the $18.3 million. Again, that's the 100% of it. No, I'm sorry, that's 96% of it. I apologize. And of course, the sales tax, we get 10% of 1%, $1.7 million. Impact fees, we're projecting about $5 million. Total local revenue is about $25.2 million. State revenue, we receive 0 in PICO. Gas tax refund, about $46,000. CONDS, about $1.3 million. And of course, our interest from CONDS, about $22,000. Total state revenue is about $1.4 million, giving us a total of $26,701,278.
Excuse me, Ms. Legutko, did you say that the 96% was the sales tax? I was.
No, the 96% is the LCIF.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. How are we going to spend those dollars? Again, part of it is going to audiovisual materials, building and fixed equipment, land improvements, motor vehicles, remodeling and renovations, and of course our debt service. $34 million will be spent on those projects. Okay. Okay, now going back, this is a summary. Our beginning fund balance from prior year, we're going to roll over about $23,953,354. We're expected to generate about 26, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this blindly, 26,701,278, given us total funds available about $50.6 million. Take away the appropriations, we'll have about 16 million left over. We transfer about 9.2 million to cover the debt service and the liability insurance and the maintenance salaries and benefits and the project managers and furniture and fixtures that are purchased at the school level, giving us a total of ending fund balance of $7.2 million. And I've identified the transfers, what they represent. Okay, let's go into 410 and 420. Those are our special revenue programs. 410 is our food service program, and our special revenue are contracted programs. Contracted programs are identified as the Title I program, Title II, IDEA, Title III. Those are the supplemental funding that we receive to supplement our programs in the schools. All right, so let's talk about our food service. Food service, local revenues, they're expected to generate about 4.1 million. State revenues, 245,000. And federal revenues, which makes up the majority of their revenues, is 13.376644, giving them a total budget of 17,794,074. How are they going to spend those dollars? Again, it's broken down by object codes, salaries, benefits, purchased services, energy, food and supplies, capital outlay, and other expenses. As you can see, the majority of their dollars are spent both in salaries and benefits, and of course, food and supplies. Okay, so food service, they're expected to end with a fund balance of 5.2 million, add their 17.7 million in revenues, take away their 17.5 in expenditures, leaves them with a fund balance of about $5.5 million. Let's get into special revenue. Special revenue represents those projects that I told you about, which is Title II, Title III, Title I, adult general programs, 21st century. It appears to be low there because typically we do not receive the award notification until throughout August, late September, or early September. So that number is going to change once we receive the award notification from the state notifying us that we're definitely getting those funds to be used. How are we spending those funds? Again, it's supplementing our programs by using it for salaries and benefits, some purchase services, some capital outlay, other expenses, and materials and supplies. The basic operating expenditures that we utilize each day. Okay, oops. This thing is quick. Okay. Again, these funds, we're projecting to receive about 10.9. We spend 10.9, so we are not allowed to have a fund balance. Basically, we are required to expend the funds first and then draw the funds down. So, no fund balance. Okay, the next one is our self-insurance fund, Fund 711.
Dr. Legatko, real quick.
Yes.
The Title I fund looks like it's gone down by almost $1 million.
Oh, yes. That's because we haven't received the full appropriation yet.
Okay, so that's
They
not
are
right.
still in the process of building that budget. Right now, what you're really seeing there is just the salaries and benefits of what we project that we would pay to our employees.
And then would that be grants that teachers are able to apply for, or what is that? Where the year before it was a little over $1 million, you're budgeting $204,000 for it now.
The other grants are I'm trying to remember. Those are like special grants that come in to us that we're not expecting. For instance, one example is the SIG grant. SIG grant, we will be receiving additional $300 and something thousand specifically for Bennett. Is it Bennett? Yes, for Bennett.
Okay.
Those dollars we're not expecting it. It's not a set amount that we receive every year. Does that make sense? So once we get the notification from the state, they will tell us how much it is. They will tell us how to complete the RFA, submit it to the state. Then they will tell us, okay, you are approved to receive this much. At that point, you will see that number increase. So
What about the 21st century schools? That's gone down $500,000.
I believe that one is a continuation of a 3 or 4 year project, 5-year project. So this is pretty much the final
getting to the
year
end of the
of
grant.
that project.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, now let's get into the self-insurance fund. As you know, we have a self-insurance fund which funds our self-insurance programs, which is property and casualty, does not include group health, life insurance, short-term disability. It's pretty much our liability insurance program for workers' comp, liability situations. So again, this covers our workers' comp, boiler and machinery, excess property, automobile. It is the insurance that we are required to carry to operate our business. Our operating revenue is expected to be about $2.5 million. We will spend approximately $2.5 million in operating expenditures, which relate the employee benefits as workers' comp, and then of course the purchase services is our insurance policy. Total net asset would be about $5 million. We are required to hold X amount of dollars in reserve in order to make our self-insurance program whole. So it's a requirement of our actuary to maintain a good fund balance to support the activities that come across, like workers' comp, liability insurance being in those types of activities. Okay. All right, that concludes my presentation. Of course, the next steps would be for Dr. Kemp to present his EFP plan, and then after that, you are to approve the proposed millage rates and approve the tentative budget for 2019-20, and set the final public hearing for September 5th, 2019, to adopt the final millage and the budget for 2019-2020. Thank you very much.
Good job, Dr. Legutko. Thank you. Dr. Kemp.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Davis. Opportunity to present the 2019-20 Educational Facilities Plan. The Educational Facilities Plan is really built up basically of 3 areas, and we want to make sure that we go over it with you tonight in full, so you get a good understanding of the opportunities that we have to work within the funding sources and that we have. So we'll be talking about capacity and projected growth. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to specifically go over the capital revenue sources and what we have. I'm also going to talk to, maybe for the first time, explain to you the EFP process and how we do that, and the projects, how they're prioritized and the types they are. And then, of course, the third part of the EFP is the bus transportation and equipment. That's something that you see every year. So I'm going to start off with current capacity and growth, projected growth. I'm going to ask Mr. Fossa to come up here and review for you what's coming up with growth. If we can get the PowerPoint up, that would be great, Chris. Mr. Fossa.
Good afternoon. Jim Fossa, Government Relations Planning and District-Wide Custodial Oversight Branch. So, not too many. There we go. So this is just a standard slide. This is a placeholder for the growth. You guys, this is a repeated performance of growth, what's going on in Clay County. You see it every day when you go on Route 16 or when you're coming down Sand Ridge. You can see they're putting all the pilings in for the First Coast Expressway. It's pretty interesting to watch how quickly that's coming out of the ground. So what I want to show you here is the COFTI projections, and I apologize. This is the COFTI projections from last year. The state had not issued the new COFTI projections until after all of our backup had been submitted. So we'll have that for the final presentation. But I can work off this just as well, and I just want to show some highlights of what we're looking at. Okay. So if you look to the left, you can see some of the areas of concern that might, certainly get your ears up would be what's going on at Oakleaf Village. You can see that we're looking at 110% level of service in 21-22. I'm a little suspect of that. Oakleaf Village is fairly built out, and when the way COFTI works is they look 3 years in arrear. So they look 3 years in arrear as far as how they're going to develop their growth, or basically their projections, and then they go ahead and project forward from there. Works very well for 60 of the 67 counties in the state of Florida, but we're growing, and that model doesn't always fit. So I'd like to just kind of point that one out. I'm not particularly agreeing with what's going on at Oakleaf Village. Tynes, however, it's showing at reaching its LOS, or level of service, at around 108% in 2021. I agree with that, and actually probably a little bit higher because of all the growth that's going on in that area.
Mr. Fossa,
Let me back up for you.
can you speak to portable reduction in those areas? Have we removed portables specifically from Tynes or Oakleaf Village?
Well, Oakleaf Village, we actually had to bring some in because we added the 6th grade there. Mm-hmm. So when we brought the 6th grade in to Oakleaf Village, we had to bring in 3, and that was actually 2 years ago that we had done that. Okay. So for Tynes right now, I think they're sitting at about 31 portables is what they have there, and we need all of that space right now.
Okay. Have we removed any from that school?
Not from Tynes. No.
Okay.
The largest schools that we pulled them away from was Plantation Oaks and Oakleaf Junior High School.
Okay.
And Mr. Fossa, is that because when these schools were originally built that those portables are actually part of our capacity?
They are part of the capacity, and I'll talk to that because when we're looking at a spot survey, you look at the actual capacity of the school, and that's permanent classrooms. It doesn't. And part of when we built those schools, they were built with portables attached.
Right. Okay.
And how many, do you happen to know, how many portables were removed from Plantation Oaks?
Plantation Oaks, we took, I think it was like 24 total.
And then how many from the junior high?
And the junior high was around 18.
Thank you.
So this is the continuation of that table, taking us all the way to 27-28. And this is where you can see things start getting exciting. If we're looking at, we all know that at Patterson Elementary School, we know we have a little situation going on over there with the growth that we have in the south, down by Magnolia West and such like that. And we've addressed that a little bit earlier of the year. Lake Asbury, I want to bring your attention to Lake Asbury Elementary. Again, these COFTI figures are last year's figures, and again, they're looking at 3 years in arrear. We have to make adjustments to these to show the growth. And in the Lake Asbury area alone, there's 6 planned developments coming in there that'll be going along with the First Coast Expressway. And so that's not really reflected here, but I will talk to them in a little bit. Again, Oakleaf Village, suspect of that 124. And Poe is growing. There's an apartment complex there that just decided to add a couple new towers. And while the rate of children is a little less than a regular house, I have to work with the numbers that I have and also with the figures that are available to me. And so I do kind of agree with this going on at Poe right there at 114%. But it will level out because there's just nothing in that area now to grow out from there.
Now, if push came to shove and we had no other option but to put portables in, which of these schools would even have room for
I don't want to look at it as putting in portables. I would say more or less looking at maybe an 8-wing classroom.
Okay, so we
So,
wouldn't be looking at portables as an
yes.
option anymore?
That's really not the way I think that we would like to go, but that's, of course, your decision at that point. You could do an 8-ring classroom at a very reasonable rate.
Okay.
And they're safer, they're easier to maintain. I mean, silly things like weed whacking in between portables is just not a very efficient way to do it. And when
Right.
you have a smaller building like a stand-up or a tilt-up or whatever, I think that's a more responsible way to go.
Would you say there's room at these schools for that addition if it's needed?
Well, we would have to move portables to
Right.
make it happen, but yes, certainly Tynes has room for it. Patterson's got room. Plantation Oaks, Lake Asbury Elementary, they all have room for these buildings.
Even if you remove portables to, okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of the smaller schools, I would say probably like Orange Park Elementary, you certainly couldn't fit one in there.
Okay.
To follow up with what Ms. Gilhousen just said, if we had to put portables in, let's say there was no financing and we had to bring portables in, could we, with the Portable Reduction Act? Are we even allowed to?
It's the last option. You're certainly not, you're not allowed to do that, but they're just not a safe way to do things.
Well, we understand that.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure where we were.
It's the last option as
Right.
far as I'm concerned.
The Portable Reduction Act addresses portables that are 20 years or older, correct?
That's correct.
It's not about adding new portables. Right.
Right.
Notice I have school R circled and there's nothing there in that particular thing again, because when we bring the new one on, the new COFDE report, that will be populated. So here's our school construction priority list. You should have this in front of you now, but then I marked it up a little bit. And what I want to draw your attention to here is elementary A, which is in the Two Creeks area, which is near Tynes. And I also want to bring up elementary R, which is off of County Road 315, right across from Shed Road. Those two builds, to me, are interchangeable. What I mean, it doesn't matter whether A goes first or R goes first. I think, a very good argument for having R go first before A. But I don't really believe at this time that we can economically do both. You know, when we're looking at the parameters that I work with as far as impact fee funds and size of school and the property that we already own, we can probably just do one of those. But there is a way around the school A.
Do you feel like the Two Creeks area is going to be developed prior to the Governor's Park? I mean, didn't we hear 12,000 permits were already pulled for? Yeah.
For the entire county, we're up than we were from the past 2 years. We've been averaging around 850 somewhere in there, and we're up tracking more, like you said, more toward the 1,200 for this year. But again, the builders can only build roughly 70, 75 homes per developer. So that's a pretty good number to look at from there. I do have kind of an odd-looking number there. If you look at school name, I have a hashtag at the K8 at Green Cove Springs, and we just haven't come up with a name for it yet, so I put a hashtag in there. It's kind of what we're doing these days.
Is that area south of Green Cove? Is that what?
No, well, we're actually looking possibly. I mean, again, everything's subject to change.
Okay.
And we
I
have
understand.
a great opportunity at Green Cove Springs Junior because there's such a large piece of property there. You could.
Got you.
Okay.
Well, and 315 is not the Governor's Park. Those are not the same thing. 315 is like Magnolia West
Right.
off Dairy Road.
Yeah, that 315 is, and I'm going to talk to that in the next couple slides. I only have two more to go. I won't bore you too much longer.
That was that property swap.
So here's the School A, which is the one that's up near Tynes. And I wish I had the pointer working on this, but if you can see where School A is located, you can see where the blue dot is. That's Discovery Oaks. And if you look to number 11, right to the right of number 11 is School A. And you can see where Tynes is, just to the lower right from there. So here's what we're looking at for a 5-year outlook. Home construction in that area should be complete by 24, 25. And it would only generate about 180 new students from what I can see. Again, I don't know what's coming on. I did get a notice from Clay County this morning that there is over by Jennings Forest, there's a new development going in there. So we'll be meeting on Thursday to talk about that. And they're popping up here and there. And of course, the Challenger Center off to the right is something that we did talk about when we addressed the Chamber of Commerce at the symposium that we had done. And that's a big question mark right now, but there's a lot of land out there. So when Tyne does go over 110% capacity, I really think it's going to happen in the 2021 school year. If we were going to build a whole new school there, School A would require rezone of that entire area. Or there's another option that we had looked at as well. But if we're looking at rezoning that entire area, that's always an issue as well. But would we need to do that? We could actually, I think, build a wing onto Tynes. Now, that means we'd have to go a little higher than what we're used to as far as an elementary school, but I believe we could satisfy that need. Plus, if we did build that school, we would deplete our funds. We can't use all of our funds for the impact fees for there, but that would deplete our funds and totally rule out, I think, probably School R at this time.
So the other question I have about School A, if a lot of the growth that we're seeing is happening more south and the north end is kind of built out, A seems a little bit north, considering where growth may eventually come.
Well, the land we have is the land we have. I kind of feel like Dick Cheney. I go to war with the troops I have, not the troops I need. But that's what we have. We have land there right now, so it does pose a bit of a challenge.
I'm just thinking busing and districting,
Exactly.
and that could potentially eventually create a really long.
Well, they're bringing, is it Long Bay Road? They're extending that all the way through. So Long Bay will soon connect all the way up to like Old Jennings and all the way on going up to Two Creeks or Tynes Boulevard. So that will be one throughway all the way through south. So that area is showing huge potential. So to me, at this time, I think that a wing at Tynes would be feasible and responsible.
I think that sounds appropriate, especially when we don't really know what all that area is going to look like in the next 10 years. Yeah.
You say that it would be over 1,000, grow to 1,000 plus
Correct.
with that wing?
We could handle it with that wing. So if we
To be-
had
would
that
be at
wing,
1,000
we'd
plus.
be able to
Thank you.
handle that. And just to let you know, we looked at the spot survey that we had done during Doe, and it would allow us to do that because of those permanent classrooms that Tynes already has. There's actually a surplus of permanent classrooms that we could build. And right now, we're filling those with portables, but you could, because of the spot survey that looks just at permanent classrooms, we could do that.
And what's the cost for an 8-classroom building?
Somewhere around 2 million, which is a lot less than 30 million for a new
Exactly.
school.
And I know that the capacity goes by the cafeteria size.
That's correct.
So that Tynes cafeteria would accommodate that many students.
You guys did a great job when you built the last bunch of schools because when we built the cafeterias, we really made those cafeterias large enough to handle the growth.
Good.
More than what we had, planned the schools for, which is good.
So what do you think the population of Tynes would be if we did a wing and brought all those kids in there?
1,200?
Through the
now?
chair, it would be the additional, it's closely to 1,100 right now, a little under 1,100, but then you'd add the 8 stations to the wing, which would bring approximately around 160 student stations to that facility, and you'd have 1,200 students in the school, which is rather large for an elementary school, but at the end of the day, with good teachers, good leadership, you'll be able to do it in an efficient manner.
Yes, sir.
How many students do we have at Thunderbolt?
It's close to 1,000 as well.
You said, and that's one of our largest schools?
Yes, ma'am.
Thunderbolt.
Yeah, and Patterson, one of the largest schools. so,
Don't even mention Patterson.
Okay. Shout out to Patterson. Way to go, Mr. O'Brien.
Leave Patterson
so
alone.
here's
Leave
a-
Patterson alone.
Here's a School R, and this is, I wish I had a better picture here, but I'm trying to show the blue area is the school zone for Lake Asbury right now. The green is actually Charles E. Bennett. The pink, if you see there, is Rideout, and in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little different color pink, and that is Patterson. So you can see, you can pretty much stand on the corner and be in 3 different school districts at one time on Russell Road and Sandridge. I don't know why I went down that road, but I just want to kind of show it to you. So here's what I'm thinking. Lake Asbury is going to grow by over 250 students by 2024. So they're going to reach their 110% capacity fairly soon, 2023. Those 6 planned developments are going to generate a lot of students. If you look at number 3, that is Cross Creek. That's 1,000 students alone. right there. And those permits are hitting constantly 15, 20 every time I get my impact fees. So they're coming on strong. And they're smaller houses at a reasonable rate, so it's going to bring in a lot of young families with children. And they're all pointed to Lake Asbury Elementary. So if we build School R, which is down, again, land that we already have across by Shed Road, we could actually open that school with about 425 students. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's not 800 students wandering in the wilderness looking for a place to go. We have to start with something. Part of that would be, would trigger that rezone that no one likes to talk about. We would have to rezone part of Patterson, but not a problem because it's Magnolia West. Those kids look right out their door and there's the new school. You'd walk across the street to that school. And also a couple of other neighborhoods that have popped up. D.R. Horton, I was assured that they wouldn't start building at this one area called Willow Springs, but voila, they've already been before the DRC, and that's moving. If you drive down 315, they got the orange signs up, and they're ready to rezone in there. So that's another huge development that could easily slide right into School R. School R would start at probably about 50%, 55%, but we've got 10+ years of planned growth that we know of.
Right.
And I just don't know, if you look at number 8 by Shadowlawn, that dotted line is the road that is projected to go in, and then who knows what's going to be going on around there. So that's why I'm really projecting that I think School R would be our best bet. And, at that point, if we did pull those kids over from Patterson, we could actually take away some portables there. If we did bring that, and then we could also take some away from Lake Asbury Elementary.
I think that's a smart
Mr.
plan.
Fassa, when we opened Shadow Lawn, do you remember how many students we had there?
I do not.
Because as I recall, it was a smaller school. And it was anticipated to be full
It
because of all
was,
of this growth that's finally
but
happening.
now it's happening.
And Shadow Lawn's full.
And Shadowlawn is actually what I call a spillover school, because when I make a reservation for, let's say, Lake Asbury, I have to be able to show where can these kids go. Basically, we allow the county to tell the builder it's okay to build, provided we have some seats for these students. Well, right now, Lake Asbury can't take them all, but they have to spill over somewhere. Some will spill over into Rideout. Some will spill over into Shadowlawn. All the spillover is taking all the open seats that we have in Shadowlawn right now.
So what's your projection for School R, if we were to go forward with that? What year would you be looking at?
23, 24. That would be the opening year. So the build would be
22, 23.
22, 21. Or 20, yeah, 22, 23.
Very good.
So here is the elephant in the room. This is Governor's Park DRI, which was not even really, it was out there last year when I did this, but the land was there, and what's going to happen? Well, the park group came along and bought it. So the DRI, which is Governor's Park, which is the lower one on the right-hand side circled in red, you can see it, and then I kind of blew it up to the left. That is happening. And that's going to be the front door of that is going to be the First Coast Expressway. So when you look at those school sites, we have 3 school sites in there that are part of the agreement. School B and School C, 2 elementary schools, and School D, which is a high school. Now, some folks say, what would you do with your junior high kids? Well, temporarily, when we open these schools, if we were to open B in 2025, you could also carry your 7th and 8th for a little while, and then then we could move them out of there afterwards. So we could easily take care of that. The blue one is another DRI called Saratoga Springs, which is on the books, but I really think that's going to be enveloped by what's going on right now up by Shadowlawn heading east. It may not be Saratoga Springs, but there's going to be a lot of developments that are out there. The Reinhold organization owns all of that land. And one of their neighborhoods is Reinhold North, which tells me there's going to be a Reinhold South.
And that's in addition to what you already said about the growth in Lake Asbury.
Yes, these guys, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what's over the horizon right now.
Definitely need another school out there.
We do have property up there.
There is property designated in the Saratoga Springs. Yeah.
Because we did a land swap from one side of the road to the other.
Well, that
That was
is
on
School
315.
R. The land swap is R.
Yeah, that's off of
Because the original piece, like you said, was on the east side of 315.
Right.
And then it moved over.
Right.
Yep.
I
But
remember
there's
that
an
now.
additional school site in Saratoga Springs if they ever build that DRI.
There's additional, okay.
And that concludes my brief. Pending any questions?
It's an exciting time in Clay County.
It is an exciting time. So Dr.
Show
Kemp's
us
going
the
to take from
money.
here.
Yeah, I joke with Mr. Fossa, he's always, he's in charge of the crystal ball. And our facilities planning and maintenance team is responsible for acts of God, lightning, and power outages and things, all the things we can control. So it is an exciting time. And when to talk briefly, to make another comment before I move on, and to talk about capital revenue sources, when you talk about the governor's park and you talk about what's happening down there, if anybody's interested in what that could potentially look like, all you have to do is go over the bridge, go to the Nocatee area, the same park group that developed Nocatee. If you want to see what that looks like, go see Nocatee. Go see that's what's coming south of 16 in time. The crystal ball comes into effect. Is it 5 years, 7 years, 10? But it's coming. So our job is to be as prepared as we possibly can be. I want to talk to you a little bit about capital revenue sources. I wanted to take this opportunity. I wanted to spend a little more time with you on this to make sure that there's clarification on how we get our money and how the capital and the facilities department works with the funds we're allowed to work with. So we have revenue sources in there. So our funds are used for, as far as capital project funds, they're used for acquisition and construction of just major capital projects and improvements to existing facilities. This stuff like land acquisition, equipment purchases, buses, maintenance, capital debt services is also accomplished with those funds. Now, Dr. Legutko has already explained this, and it's already actually listed in her section, but I wanted to go back over this so I can go over the funds that we really truly have access to and what we get to deal with every year, and we present it to you every year in the EFP. One of the funds we deal with is the PICO fund. That is the Public Education Capital Outlay. For years, we used to get PICO new construction dollars. Those were cut by the state years ago to zero. We used to get PICO maintenance, as you've heard me say multiple times publicly, and I think some of it's been misunderstood in the community. We get $0 for PICO maintenance. So the money we used to receive for PICO maintenance, which is the state used to give us, we get $0 for that now. Last year we received, it was cut last year to $855,000, but that was dollars that was utilized to offset the maintenance needs that Mr. Hans has in the maintenance department. So the PICO is a source of funds that we have in the past relied on. The critical one is, and Dr. Legutko addressed this, is the 1.5 mil levy. That is our LCIF funds. That's the local capital improvement funds. And so, that authorizes that when we did that 1.5 mil, that's what can be used to buy school buses, land, maintenance, and repair. So we pretty much operate the EFP out of the LCIF fund. And I'm going to go through each fund line and show you what it looks like we have, and then after we take out obligations, what it is. But 1.5 mil, that's your LCIF. That's being advertised right now. Now remember, and Dr. Legutko is very good at saying that these are projections. I mean, we operate on projections. At the end of the year, we get actual, because people don't always pay their taxes on time. So we operate on these projections throughout the year. So that's the LCIF dollars. And honestly, what you need to remember about the 1.5 mil LCIF, that is the primary fund in which we try to operate out of for facilities. Another capital revenue source that we've had access to for a while is the BCC local option sales tax. That is, the county has their penny. And from that, that was a voter-approved 1% sales tax. So when you think about that, the school district actually receives 8.81 of the approved 1%. They get 93. We get 8.81% of that one. So what does that translate to? That's the $1.7 million you'll see in a minute. That's kind of like a pass-through to technology. And that comes from the local option sales tax from the BCC. That is a capital source that we have been relying on. Here's one that's probably the most misunderstood capital revenue source out there. This is the impact fee. It's the educational facility impact fee. Impact fees, just to sum it up, can truly only be used for new growth only. So impact fees cannot be utilized for repair, renovation, to offset anything that Mr. Hans has needs with his maintenance department. And these are the impact fees you hear her talk about a lot. So even in Mr. Foss's presentation, when we're talking about School A, if we're limited on new growth fees, you'll see we project to generate about $5 million in new growth. It can only be used for new growth. Impact fees can't be used for portable reduction. If they were, you can't be utilizing those funds for that. If you see, we get an impact fee for the public. So anytime somebody builds a house or developer builds a house, they pay an impact fee. Single family, $7,034, multifamily is $3,236, mobile home is $5,907 per dwelling unit. We collect those impact fees, we reserve those impact fees, and we save those impact fees for new growth. And something else people don't realize about impact fees, maybe this might be the first time you hear this, I know Dr. Legutko knows, and I know our team knows. Every year we get a collection of impact fees. It's like a class. This year, we have 6 years to use that impact fee for growth, the oldest first, or we have to return it. So the $5 million a year that we receive in impact fees this year for this cohort of impact fees lasts for 6 years. So we use that, and we can use that for new growth and some debt service of new growth that was required. So that's the impact fee. You'll hear that a lot. That's one of the things that our planner, Mr. Fossa, has to talk about. That's one of the things that we have to work with impact fees.
Excuse me, Dr. Temp.
Yes.
Can you go back one slide to
Sure.
the sales tax, the optional sales tax?
Sure.
So I know that there's an issue with this where it expires for us December 2019, and I know that the superintendent and staff, somebody was reaching out to the Board of County Commissioners to see if they would enter into a memorandum of understanding to continue it. Have we had any success with that?
Yes, ma'am, through the chairs, Mr. Superintendent.
Go ahead. And through the chair, we've had some tentative dates. Those dates got bumped, and we're trying to schedule some dates to get back on the calendar. So still working to find some dates.
So as of right now, we lose that $1.7 million for technology.
As of right now, that agreement sunsets in December, and the $1.7 million was sunset.
Well, thank you for trying. Educational facility impact fee we talked about. Here's the capital outlay and debt service. This is the CO and DS thing, the line item you will see. This CO and debt service is actually the tax on motor vehicle licenses that are available to school districts. So, it's basically projects that these projects have to be in the PPL. So, for example, it's not a large amount of funds. You'll see when I show the dollar amount, but the CO and DS are earmarked for a specific project. Just so happens the CONDS is earmarked for the cafeteria expansion at Doctor's Inlet for this year. So that's pretty much the first proceeds from taxes on motor vehicle license available to school districts and communities. So therefore, we can't use that for maintenance. We can't use that for repair and renovation. We have the gas tax. The gas tax is also a revenue source that we receive. It's usually not a lot, but it can only be used to improve right-of-way or the roadway, right-of-ways, to fund maintenance of roads and streets within the school district around our school zones and things of that nature. You'll see the actual dollar amount in there. So again, these funds can't be used for repair or renovation. And then, of course, you saw the debt service. You saw the COP, the certificate of participation, the bonds that were offered. And Dr. Legutko showed you the debt service schedule and what we have left to pay. We're still. People think this facility is the Taj Mahal, I've heard it called, and the new facility. But actually, we're at the time now where this facility should be scheduled for major mechanical replacement, HVAC systems and things of that nature. But the debt service is a way to generate revenue, and that's what you had to do when you experienced the growth in Fleming Island, Oakleaf, and Eagle Harbor back in the day. But we're still paying for that. That debt service comes out of the local capital improvement fund. So let's take a look at it. Let's just show it to you. That's what I would like to do. So maybe it'd be better for me to point back here so everybody for the board members to see it. So when you take a look at the actual projected new revenue that capital receives, we get about 1.5 generates around $18.3 million for 1920. I told you, PICO new construction, nothing. We'd get $0 for that. The CONDS, which was the motor vehicle tax, that's set aside for the Doctor's Inlet cafeteria expansion. That's about approximately $1 million. This year we get $0 in PICO maintenance, nothing for Mr. So we have to offset the needs that we used to get that $855,000. The capital plan will have to offset that for Mr. Hans and the maintenance team.
Impact fees is projected to be $5 million a year, $5 million a year for new growth. It can be used for new growth, and we have to plan accordingly. You saw how we're going to have some responsible decisions where we might have to have a little larger elementary schools when the superintendent's right. With the right leadership, we can do that and just use our impact fees wisely, because our impact fees will not cover the need for the new growth for the schools that are projected. BCC sales tax, that's the $1.7 million that we have projected right now to receive. That's a pass-through to technology. That goes to Mr. McCauley and Mr. Bunkley and his team.
Why is that budgeted in there when we're not receiving it past December of 19?
Because as of right now, well, I'll talk to you about the out years in a second. I have a reason for that.
Okay.
So the $1.7 million, part of it's being optimistic, part of it, there's a reason that 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, I'll talk to you about the out years for projected revenue in just a second. It'll come. I'll explain it. BCC sales tax is 1.7. That's what we've generated in the past. The mill money, this is the hardening. This is just the safety hardening portion. You've had this presented to you before. It's the 3.897. Dr. Legutko presented that figure. That's for school safety and hardening. We have that for the first time this year. And then the gas tax, I told you that was for the roadway improvements, the roadway, right-of-way roadway improvements for safety around the roads. That's $46,500. So it looks like, when you take a look at this figure right here, it looks like, gosh, we have $29,972,000 to operate with new revenue every year. And we actually, that is actually what is received. And then when you start taking a look at the obligations that have to come out of that, and Dr. Legutko's done her best to try to minimize this as we've moved forward, but some of it's just a requirement. So when you take out the debt service for all of what we're looking at for the repayment of the certificate COP bonds, for previous growth, the refinance, all the series, you're looking at $5.1 million. That's taken from that figure. When you take about district-wide equipment, that's another $598,000 taken out of the LCIF dollars that goes to support the total district-wide program. Property casualty and insurance, the $1.16 million, that's taken out of LCIF. The district-wide technology, when you see that that's the pass-through, that's taken out to offset those, the 1.7 pass-through, that goes to technology. The maintenance department salaries, facilities planning and construction, the project manager salaries that's legally allowable to be reclassed is reclassed. And then, of course, the bus purchases that come out. So when you talk about that original $29 million, you got $14,526,042 coming off the top of that. So what does that really mean? So as far as money that we can use for repair and maintenance, I just want to make sure that I went back to the same chart, and I want you to see that I pretty much get to operate out of the LCIF for the entire educational facilities plan projects, the facilities portion as well as maintenance. So once again, PICO construction can't be used for routine maintenance and repair. It's not there. CONDS is a designated categorical. It's already there. It's already designated. No PICO maintenance. Impact fees cannot be used to repair routine maintenance and facilities. That is for new growth only and debt service. BCC sales tax is a pass-through. I don't get that. Mill money is is already designated as a categorical for safety and security. So those safety security projects that we said we're doing in the mill money, we're executing those projects with the mill money. Gas tax I can't use. So here's the outlook. So you take the $29,972,768.54 new revenue, you reduce $14,526,000 in the obligations, you take out the impact fees, you take out the CONDS and that figure of $1 million, you take out the gas tax, an actual new revenue that we're going to receive this year, and this is actually a little better than the years before. I've received anywhere between 6 and 7.5, 8. This year it's 9.3, and a lot of that's because of people who paid their taxes late. And once again, we operate on projections, we end up on actuals. But I get $9.3 million in actual new revenue. So what does that mean? Let's talk about the reality of what this means. After all categoricals, all the restricted funds are taken into consideration. Each year we end up with, like I said, $7 to $9 million in allowable revenue that I can use to operate and maintain our facilities with. So let's just do simple math. Take $9 million, divide it by the 50 facilities. We have 43 schools plus all the other ancillary facilities. So we have 50. That's about $180,000 a facility for the year for each facility assuming all failures are equal and everything breaks equally. Wouldn't it be great if equitably I could say each school got 180 grand? That's not the way it works. It's also 180 grand per facility. It also is, that's if we don't plan for any additional, save any of those dollars for additional growth beyond what impact fees will generate. So 180 grand per facility. Let me give you some examples of this. Everybody's heard about the Orange Park High School chiller replacement, right? It's approximately $1.2 million. So if you take that $180,000 a year figure and you take a look at just the Orange Park High School chiller at $1.2 million, that's the total allocation that we would have available for facilities for almost 7 schools. So just for the heck of it, I went and just looked at our HVAC issues. The HVAC issues are a pressing issue every day. So when you look at Clay High School, Ridgeview High School, Thunderbolt Elementary, and you can see it's only fixing one building. It's one building, maybe a couple buildings in there, or maybe it's a control. You got KHE HVAC, Building 9. You got Clay Hill HVAC, just the air handler, and a fire alarm replacement. If you take a look at the figures that's budgeted in the EFP to out of that $9 million that we have available to work with, those repairs for one single item at 9 schools, just fixing one thing at those 9 schools, takes my facility planning and construction, takes the dollars available that equals 16 schools. 16 schools. 9 repairs, at single item repairs at 9 schools consumes the total available for 16 schools. So therein lies the issue. Now, when we talk about the EFP process, and I want to go through the EFP process, because when we finally get our dollars from the state and we work with Dr. Legutko's office and we get rid of all those obligations and all the categories that we have to remove, and we have a figure to work with, we start working on our EFP process. Before I go into this, I do want to announce to you that, and it's exciting because this is going to be my last time doing this for you on this. This is going to be Mrs. Bryce Ellis's responsibility. She's going to be the new Director of Facilities Planning and Construction. She'll be taking the place of Mr. Connell, who is going to Shady Acres full-time. So he has decided, he got us through. He kept his promise, but congratulations to Ms. Ellis. This is going to be your opportunity to serve next year.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so let's talk about what Ms. Ellison then had to do with the EFP process this year. Okay, so where are the capital dollars being spent? I hear this question a lot. You know what my categories are. I just showed them to you and what I can use them for. So where is the LCIF dollars being spent? You have, I think it's page 21 through 28 of the EFP that you've had for backup. It's been in public document. There's a plan list of projects for 1920. There's the projects that we have every year that we bring to you. In that plan list of projects for 1920, there are 83 planned projects that we have in there that if nothing else breaks, we're going to take the budgeted dollars for the EFP that we have this year, and we're going to go execute those 83 planned projects. And we also have 28 projects that roll in from the year before and from 1819 that are in progress. Now, I want you to think about something. 111 projects. 111 projects. And we've pretty much done that with 2 project managers. And so I have a director and I have 2 project managers, 111 projects, and they work as reliably and efficiently as they can. We execute as many of those projects as we can. 28 projects did roll over. So the type and priority of projects in the EFP, basically we sit down as a team with the facilities, sits down with maintenance, and we start looking at what is the worst right now that we have to budget in the EFP for a line item for. These things are that's why when you see the ad in the paper, you see all these projects that could possibly go wrong for us. We advertise those in case something breaks. So Bryce and the team sit down and they build the EFP. They build these 83 planned projects, and they say, what's the worst first? What are we definitely budgeting this year? Now, principals get excited when they see this 5-year plan, and so and they get upset when projects get bumped. And to answer your question, and they'll call the superintendent and they'll say, Kemp said we're getting a new cafeteria, or we're getting new this, that. We may have planned for that to happen, but that's why I wanted to put this in here. Why do projects get bumped? Why do they get bumped to the out years? The EFP is required by the state to present a 5-year plan. And I would love to sit here and be as, just tell you it's a full 5-year plan. Unfortunately, it's not that. It's an annual plan based on the funding capacity that we have this year. It's really more like a monthly, weekly, what happened this weekend plan, and projects get adjusted throughout the year. So it's based on funding capacity, and right now, the majority of our projects are maintenance-related and major system replacements that have to happen. So unknown system failures happen. Unplanned emergency projects happen. We had one this week. That's why this is tentative. We have one this week that we're going to have to adjust the EFP for with the Middleburg transportation, with the hydraulic leak in the bus garage that we're going to have to mitigate. That was an unplanned emergency project that's could be very costly. So unplanned emergency projects. So I want to give you an example. Let's talk about last 18-19 EFP. So what was accomplished with tax dollars last year? What did Bryce and her project manager, or if she was a project, what did the two project managers, what were we able to get accomplished? These are just 18, 19 of the projects that were in the EFP that you approved last year. They put in RTU repair replacements at 10 schools. You can look at, those are a number of schools. We did portable reduction at multiple schools. We did 21 camera systems, Mr. Superintendent, per your request. We put 21 schools received cameras, 14 in access controls, and we were executing the 2018-19 EFP as approved by the board and as promised is what we were working on with the capital dollars that we had. So when you take a look at this and they say, oh gosh, now let's look what had to be added. This is just last year. So though Bryce and the team and Phil and the team tried to schedule with the worst air conditioners first, guess what? Other air conditioners broke before that. Other RTUs, rooftop units, but things broke before that. HVAC repair, partial repair. We had 4 additional schools that weren't planned to happen in that year. They were actually in an out year. They had to get bumped. Somebody had to move out, somebody had to move in because we had 4 schools break down with HVAC repair. 2 schools, their controls got fried, and we had to replace HVAC controls. Erosion control problems, and for those of you who are praying people, please pray that we don't get any tropical storms or hurricanes. The storm water repairs, the drains, lines that break, in Oakleaf, it was Oakleaf Junior High, I believe, the parent pickup zone opened up with a big sinkhole. And just so you know, that creates a little concern for parents when they go to the parent pickup zone and there's a big hole and we're sinking. So that all had to be issues. So the sanitary line break, the issue with the CCUA and Keystone sewer problem issue at Keystone High, the fuel line break that we had at the Middleburg High School and back there by that was an EPA project, unplanned. A big storm blew the track off of Orange Park High School. That was an unplanned track repair because that's a physical education class. I mean, the track is part of physical education curriculum. So I just pointed these little 6 things out. That was over $1 million in unplanned emergency projects. So why is it not truly a 5-year plan? We do the best projection we can. But projects get bumped due to unplanned emergencies. Projects get bumped because of Fawcett doesn't have a crystal ball. I can't control lightning strikes. You were in my office, and Mr. Hans reported the things that happened last weekend. We lost full fire alarm systems that got struck by lightning. I don't know what the deal is, and I'm not from Clay, so maybe somebody can help me. I don't know what the deal is from Clay Hill through the Doctors Inlet area to Patterson, but that is the lightning strike zone. I just, if a lightning storm comes, just drive off. So over $1 million in unplanned projects right there, and that's why projects get bumped. So, as far as all the projects that we have put in for 2018, the 83 projects that we have planned and the 28 that we're carrying forward, you've had those projects now. That is our best, if nothing breaks, and something already broke. But if nothing else breaks besides the Middleburg transportation garage and things of that nature, we got to get our hydraulic list rolling for buses to get in and out and serviced for schools opening soon. And if we get that fixed, we'll get that adjusted. But the projects you have in front of you in the EFP are based on type and priority, and it's really worst first major systems that is a facility that's driving the EFP. And that's the process and the project. So that $180,000 a school, if everything broke equally, and if we saved no money to supplement impact growth, it doesn't go very far. It doesn't make it. I would love if it did. I would love if we get, Dr. Legutko, I would love if we got that $29 million instead of ending up with the 9, okay? I would be great, and that would be awesome, but that's not our reality. And I wanted to take time to share with you what was going on with that. Now, the third part of the EFP, and you talked about projects. I always get questions on projects and processes, but the third part of the EFP that we're required to submit is the bus transportation and equipment. Mr. Sweat's here as well. I want to give you an update on where we are. In one of the board workshops, we talked about the 100 buses, lease purchase of 100 buses that we're working on. After Dr. Legutko and I had some conversations, Dr. Legutko and I, we made the decision that we wanted to issue an RFP to ensure that we're fiscally responsible and receiving the best financing and the market rates for that, for that lease purchase option. For the public, we're looking at 190 regular 77 passenger buses, I believe it is, and we're looking at 10 ESC buses. That was going to allow us to have a full fleet of air-conditioned buses, bring our fleet up to date. We made the decision to do the RFP for that to get the best leasing available. That bus lease purchase, that's happening as we speak. It's in process. That is intended to come to the board for consideration in the September meeting. The final EFP that we have to submit at this time has the placeholders based on the original lease that we have. We intend those numbers to drop, and that'll be adjusted in the final, and you'll be updated on that. So when you take a look at that 7-year, the lease purchase plan of the 77 buses, it turns out to be a $1.6 million payment for the bus purchases. Now, typically, we do anywhere between $1.8 and $2.5 million a year when we were purchasing the buses outright. With such a stretch on capital dollars and needing dollars for emergency projects, it made sense for us to take a look at these, to be able to get the 100 buses, to get our fleet completely upgraded and with a lower payment over time. So you're looking at $1.6 million. That is the placeholder. That will change. So when you take a look at that payout, that's what that's for. Also, we're in the last full payment of the GPS software. That's a popular item, but the GPS software, and then that was $136,944, and that's the fourth year we just paid that, and then the last final year will be only $27,388 because I threw such a fit. We all threw such a fit the first year. They reduced that last payment to $27. So Mr. Sweat has his work cut out for him. To take a look at the GPS systems that we have and, what's the direction going to be. He's been tasked with looking at that, putting a committee together, what's going to be his recommendation to me, the superintendent, and to this board moving forward with the GPS. I can tell you we absolutely have to have a GPS. It has proven invaluable in certain circumstances. So that's the GPS, that's the capital outlay for bus purchases. You can see as far as the ESC bus management plan, I told you we're going to buy 10. We're keeping, we'll keep buses in inventory. We will sell off the old buses for and retain those capital dollars that come back for replacement of vehicle fleets over time, and the regular bus management plan. So those three areas. I mean, I know I spent a little extra time this year to make sure that all the capital sources that I have access to were shared, and what I'm allowed to use and how to use those dollars. We're going to continue to be fiscally responsible with the dollars that we have based on the challenges that we have every day. And that will be, and we're asking for tentative approval of this year's EFP as part of Dr. Legutko's budget process. Again, it'll come to you in September for the final. And all those changes or any figures that have changed or projects that have changed due to unplanned emergencies will be updated at that time. And I do appreciate your support, and I hope this has been helpful. Okay.
Very well done, Dr. Kemp. Thank you. Okay. Next, I will open the public hearing for comments on the 2019-2020 budget and millages. If anyone would like to address the board, please come up to the mic and I do. Well, you didn't have to fill out a card, but Cheryl Brown, you didn't have to fill out a card, but thank you, because then that secretary will know how to spell your name. Thank you. And anyone else who wishes to speak, you don't have to have a card, but you'll have an opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Brown.
This isn't directly budget related. My name is Cheryl Brown. My address is on file. I'd like to thank those of you that voted to place the sales tax on an early ballot, taking a proactive role in funding the funds the legislature has neglected to pass on to public schools. Without these PICO funds, which charter schools get, it makes it extremely difficult for the maintenance of buildings that is desperately needed, not to mention having to build new schools. Dr. Kemp did an excellent job of showing just how necessary it is to get these funds sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have another card, Stanley Finning.
Stanley Fanning, and I'd like to thank the men and women of our United States Armed Forces for defending our right to come here and address the board. And first of all, I'd like to say that I've got some issues with the meeting notice. I don't think that we're being advised of our right to appeal any decisions made here. Florida Statute 286.0105 requires certain language to be in the notices, so that if there's a decision made here that we want to appeal, we can do that. I don't see it on any agendas anywhere for the school district and the school board. With that being said, I'd like to suggest maybe looking at doing some things like they're doing in other parts of the country. I know in Indiana, for example, students have to pay for books similar to college students. You buy the books from a bookstore, you can cash them back in, and it saves people like me that don't have a child in school from having to fund somebody else's kids' school books. They can pay for them. If they want to keep them, they can keep them. It's their book. If they want to turn them back in at the end of the year, they can trade them in for next year's books. That might save about $400 a year per student. I don't know the math on that, but it seems pretty significant to me, something to look at. I'd like to commend the fund balance. I think that's a welcome news improvement. And I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to have questions about the need for the sales tax and the little boy who cried wolf when there was no wolf emergency meeting on July 8th. But I guess I'll have to come back up for that during public presentations or whenever you like me to, Mrs. Chair. So that's what I've got to say about that. Look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you for paying attention to everything I had to say.
Mr. Finning, I do want to ask you something. The first speaker had the address on the card. Your address isn't on here, and it says protected.
Yes,
By
ma'am.
what reason is it protected? Your address?
Do you get to ask me that?
Well, I just wonder why it's protected.
It's none of your business why it's protected.
It certainly is your business. Florida Statute 286.0114 allows this board to set the parameters for public speakers for any issue. And one of those things that it allows is to prescribe the procedures or forms that an individual must complete and fill out in order to make a statement. The board policy says that anyone who wants to address the board on any issue will fill out a speaker card and include on it their name and address. And so he is obligated to provide you his reason why it's protected. There is nothing in Florida Statute 119 that says anything about his address being protected. There are certain
How does he know that?
circumstances where it's exempted from public record, and it can be not disclosed to the public, but there's nothing that says that he does not have to put it on the card. It is a requirement before he can speak that he fill out the card with his name and address.
But if he just puts his address on the card, if he doesn't want to say it publicly, that would be okay.
Certainly.
Okay.
But the card is a public record. Anybody that makes a request for that card then gets my address. It's nobody's business what my address is. It's
They are
protected.
entitled to know, based on board policy,
Ask-
the address of the person that's speaking.
Does
If he
that
doesn't
apply-
want to speak, if he doesn't want to give his address, he doesn't want to speak.
Does that apply during a public hearing?
It applies when you're
It applies
addressing
for
the
everything.
board. Yeah.
I thought for a public hearing, we waive the cards, though.
There's nothing in policy about waiving the cards.
I said they aren't required to fill out a card, but it helps the secretary if they'll fill out a card. But when people
What's
come
the
up,
need
we
for my
ask them.
address? Why do you need my address?
I don't want it personally. I just. I
But
just
what's the
wonder-
need? Why is there a need for a
I mean,
citizen's
if you were,
address?
if you were law
There is no-
enforcement
there
or
is no
something, I could
reasonable need for my
understand it, but I
address to come here
didn't,
and
I
address
just
the
was
board.
curious as to why your address is protected. Because I don't think you're law enforcement,
No,
and I don't know I'm not a lawyer, so
You're-
I don't
that's
know all the
exactly
reason.
right.
Okay. I'm
Maybe he's
not
a
an
Supreme
attorney.
Court justice.
Okay. Excuse me.
who is? Mr.
He
Bacon, what
doesn't-
did you just
he
say to
doesn't
me?
have to- You don't have to justify why this board has asked for addresses to him.
Okay.
And I don't have to justify why it's protected. I wrote down it's protected. If you want to justify, take me to court.
Thank
Fair
you,
enough.
Thank you, Mr. Fanning. Would anyone else like to address the board? If you would be so kind to state your name, and if it's difficult to spell, please spell it for the secretary.
My name is Amy Fairs, Fehrs.
Thank you.
And I wasn't able to come to the last school board meeting, so I too wanted to thank you all for developing a plan to address the conditions of our school. I didn't give you my address, I'm sorry. It's 6119 Bobby Paget Road, Jacksonville, Florida. I am a Clay County citizen, but I live so close to Baldwin that that's the closest post office, so. I'm just going to tell you my little story. I'm a sixth grade teacher at Clay Hill Elementary, which means I teach in the portables. Our school is getting up in age. I remember starting kindergarten there the year it opened. And much of our campus has had to be, last summer, we had to dig up a lot of the campus in order to replace the plumbing. At the end of this school year, I think our air conditioning system caught fire, and apparently we have a lot of lightning strikes too. But just me personally, I'm in a portable that is so damp most of the time that when I write on paper, it rips. And that's with a pencil. I can't write with a pen. And a lot of the students say, Miss Fairs, my paper is crumpling, and when they hold it up, it just folds over. I've had so many sinus infections that I'm becoming immune to antibiotics, and many of my students have the same symptoms that I have. So I do see a need in the sales tax, and I do see it as an emergency because kids shouldn't be suffering these kinds of conditions. Every time I'm out of school for 2 weeks, suddenly I'm not sick anymore. So I'm looking forward to going back and meeting my new students. I always look forward to a new school year. I'm excited, but I dread being sick again. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate your attention to the matter.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? Then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. The next item is number 3, to adopt the 2019-2020 required local effort mill levy.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2019-2020 final proposed required local effort mill levy of 3.799 with the proposed amount to be raised of $48,280,899. The required local effort millage includes basic required local effort of 3.791 and a prior period adjustment millage of 0.008.
Ms. Bullock? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. The next item is to adopt the 2019-2020 2020 basic discretionary operating mill levy.
I make a motion that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2019-2020 final budget proposed base discretionary millage of 7.48 with a 0.748, sorry, with a proposed amount to be raised of $9,506,215.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Mary Bull.
Okay, here we go.
Bullock Bola.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're in sync here. We have a motion by Ms. Bullock, a second by Mrs. Bola. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. The next motion is to adopt the 2019-2020 Local Capital Improvement Fund mill levy.
Hang on. I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2019-2020 final proposed capital outlay millage of 1.500 with a proposed amount to be raised of $19,063,266.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second, I'm sorry.
I will have a motion by Ms. Bola, a second by Ms. Gilhousen. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Let's see. Okay. Next, we have to adopt the 2019-2020 additional voted operating mill levy.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 1920 final proposed voted millage of 1.0 with a proposed amount to be raised of $12,708,844.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Mrs. Gilhousen, a second by Ms. Karakis. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Next is the, let's see, adopt the 2019-2020 total mill levy.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2019-2020 final proposed total millage will equal 7.047 with a total amount to be raised of $89,559,224. The total millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 19.44%.
I second it.
Have a motion by Mrs. Karakis, a second by Mrs. Bullock. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Next is to adopt the tentative 2019-20 through the 2023-24 educational facilities plan.
I make a motion that the Clay County School Board approve the 2019 to 2020 5-year educational facilities plan.
I second it.
Have a motion by Ms. Bullock, a second by Mrs. Bola. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Next, adopt the 2019-2020 tentative budget, all funds, and set the public hearing for the 2019-2020 final budget Thursday, September the 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the tentative budget for the 2019-2020 school year as follows. General operating in the amount of $349,863,056. Special revenue budget in the amount of $33,968,147. Debt service budget in the amount of $5,849,536. Capital outlay budget in the amount of $50,654,624 for a total final budget of $440,335,363.
Second.
Have a motion by Mrs. Bola, second by Mrs. Gilhousen. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Number 10, Resolution 20-01, determining 2019, 2020 tentative millages.
Hold on, I have to vote on the last resolution.
Oh, okay.
I move that the Clay County School Board approve resolution number 20-01, determining the 1920 tentative revenues and millages levied for fiscal year 1920.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Ms. Gilhousen, a second by Ms. Karakis. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. The next item is Resolution 20-02, adopting the 2019-2020 tentative budget.
I move that Clay County School Board approve Resolution 20-02, adopting the tentative 2019-2020 budget.
I second that.
I have a motion by Mrs. Karakis, a second by Mrs. Bullock. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
as to item number 9, the adoption of the all funds, there was nothing in the motion to set the public hearing for 2019-2020 final budget for Thursday, September and I don't know the date, 5th, I think, 2019, at 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
It was not
September
included
5th
in the
at
motion.
6 p.m.
Oh, they just can't say move approval, or you didn't, who,
It
let's see,
was-
number 9
It
was
w-
made
it was not
by.
part of the motion itself.
It wasn't part of it.
It wasn't part of.
All right,
written on
Ms.
here.
Karakis, okay.
I move that,
Are
do
we-
do you want it
wait, do we have
restated, or
to-
can I just make a motion to?
Just well, you can read it right there, make a motion to set the public hearing.
All right.
Well, okay, just make another motion.
I moved that we set a public hearing for the 2019-2020 final budget for Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m.
It's 2019.
Oh, 2019, sorry.
Second that.
And then it was seconded by Tina. All right, I have a motion by Ms. Karakis, second by Ms. Bullock, that the public hearing for the 2019-20 final budget will be Thursday, September 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Extra motion. Okay, ladies, very good. Next, we have presentations from the audience. I have one card. That will be Stanley Finning.
Stanley Fanning, my address is protected and not required per Florida Statute 286-0114, public meetings, reasonable opportunity to be heard.
Madam Chair.
Number 4, policies of
Mr.
board.
Finning, would you hold a minute? Mr. Bittner is wanting to speak.
Point of order, I've got the
We,
floor.
we won't take this against your 3 minutes if you speak.
Madam Chair, there are no exceptions in the board policy for putting your name and address on the card, number 1. Number 2, there is no exception in Florida Statute 119 for I don't want to. And
I don't
so
have to.
there's also no exception to 286.0114 that says that he doesn't have to do what he doesn't want to do if the board has set a policy in line with the parameters set forth in that statute, and you have.
No.
My caution to you is that if you're not going to enforce the board policy for one person, then you can't enforce it for anyone. And also, you're violating your own policies.
Mr. Finning, if you would like to just write your address on the card, then
No.
we're good to go.
No, because
Okay, then you're not allowed.
286
Then you won't be recognized, Mr. Finning.
then, Mrs. Studdard, I'm gonna have to sue you.
You're going to have to do what?
Sue you in a court of law because
Okay.
you're violating my First Amendment rights to speak
I'm
here
acting on
today.
the advice of our attorney, thank you.
Okay, well, you're the
Okay.
one that made the decision. And
Next
I'm the
is-
one that's informing you that
Thank you,
I'm gonna
Mr.
sue
Finning.
you for this
Thank you.
decision today.
If you would write your address on the card, this wouldn't be a problem.
If you would know what the Florida state statute requires for me to come here, I was trying to tell you,
Okay.
your
Well-
attorney's giving you bad advice. If you wanna stick with
Okay.
that,
Thank
it's
you,
your
Mr.
call to
Fanning.
make.
You may be
Yes, ma'am.
seated.
Thank you. No, I'm going home.
Superintendent comments? I didn't ask you to go home, Mr. Finning. Superintendent comments.
The chair, I'm good, thank you.
Now, y'all note this in the record. He said no comment. We may never hear that again.
The big one, Elizabeth.
Okay, school
Oh,
board
yeah.
comments. Ms. Gilhousen,
I have none.
Ms. Bola,
None.
Ms. Bullock.
No.
Goodness. Well, then, the meeting is adjourned. Don't forget, we have executive session right after this meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Dream on.
Good, and you?